Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Live Your Jam podcast. My name's Ellen McGinnis, and I'm your host. Welcome to our second episode with a guest. I'm so glad that you're here, and we're keeping the momentum of going strong. Our guest today is someone I'm fortunate to know personally and also call a dear friend. She's a powerful example of what it looks like to live with intention, to transform your life by reclaiming your power and stepping out of roles and behaviors that no longer serve us so you can create a life that is aligned with your soul. That's exactly what we're doing here at Live Your Jam. So I'm going to introduce you to my friend of, I think, almost 25 years, 20, almost 30, Susan De Vira. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Ellen. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's just a joy to have you here, and your story is so powerful and inspirational. And I know it's going to resonate with a lot of women at middle age. There are definitely some insights here for men, but many of us can relate to many women and men, but women in particular, about how after years of making sacrifices, whether we chose to work outside of the home or stay inside of the home, that most of us have made sacrifices when we started a family, and most of them willing sacrifices. Some maybe perhaps not, or maybe begrudgingly, or we're wondering, maybe that wasn't such a good call when we raised our families. And over time, it happens for many women. I think this is inherent in your story that we're so lucky to hear today, is that oftentimes we can lose our connection to ourselves and our power. And so today we're going to explore what happened to you and what it means to you to reclaim your energy, reconnect to your truth, and start over and create a life that reflects not just what others need from you, but what your soul and what you're being called toward. So I thank you for that. So I'm going to just tell everybody how we met. We met in Chicago about 30 years ago. Remember? I know you do. We hit it off immediately. We had a shared friend, Laura Jane Saveri, which hail Jay, who was a connector, and she had a big group of women. She would just meet a cool woman and introduce her to everybody else. There were probably like 15 of us, and we had different varying degrees of connection. Yeah. And Susan was one of the women that I just was like, I want to be her friend. And Susan at the time lived in New York. You worked for Time Inc. and also did advertising really for Southern Living and also Sunset Magazine, which you and LJ had a common connection in. And then subsequently moved to Chicago, where I got to spend more time with you. And then our friendship really forged ahead. And then you moved back to New York City, right?
Yes. Yep.
Working with Sunset.
Living at the time, yeah.
It was Southern Living. Okay, yeah,
yes.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I remember dinner on one of my patio in Chicago in my apartment. You're like, well, I'm like, what's going on, Susan? You're like, well, I bought a ticket. I am taking a break from my job, and I'm traveling around the world.
Yep.
What year was that?
That was 1999. We left on Columbus Day, and I went with a friend, and we had an around the world plane ticket, and it was starting off with a trek in Nepal, a 21-day trek around the Manaslu Pass. Yeah, Larkula Pass. And that was the anchor that started it and then gave us the starting point. And then we thought, well, we're there. We might as well just keep going. I had a friend who had done it years before, and it was something I always wanted to do. And I thought, I'm working, I'm single, I've got, the time and the resources to make it happen. So a friend of mine and I left, in 1999. So we were gone for a year.
Yeah. So I remember you telling me being so excited for you and also inspired on just such a bold move. And that decision to travel around the world, in fact, changed your life.
Huge.
Because at the tail end, you can tell our listeners, at the tail end of that trip, you met someone, true?
Yes. Yep. I met my husband. We were diving with whale sharks on the Minglu Reef on the west coast of Australia. And we just platonic, and I kept traveling and went to New Zealand and actually kind of never left. So I arrived in New Zealand and did a little bit of travel, and then Rob and our relationship developed, and I went home very quickly for Thanksgiving and Christmas in 2000 and started off in 2001 back in a very small little town, Kaikoura, New Zealand. And we started our, relationship then.
Right. So at the end of your trip, you met Rob, and the man that you're ended up marrying and then having subsequently two children with, two boys. And we share that commonality because your boys are just a couple years older than mine. I think yours
Yeah.
are like 21 and 20 and mine are, right? And
Yeah.
mine are
20 and 19 now. So
20,
they're very,
20 and
yeah,
19,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Mine are 18 and 17.
yeah.
You guys moved to New York for a while, then
Yeah.
came back and really settled in Koikura. And we got to on the south, pretty remote part of New Zealand, right? So you're
Very remote.
literally like across the world.
Rural. Yeah. Very, very rural. Beautiful place. But, 3,000 people, 2.5 hours to see your first traffic light. It was very rural. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
That was where Rob was from. Like we chose that area. His parents lived there. So the boys were born in Manhattan. We were working in the New York area. The boys were born. My mom and dad both passed away within a year of one another. And shortly after my dad passed, we decided to move back to Kaikoura and raise the boys in New Zealand. Yep. So they were 1 and 2 when we moved back to Kaikoura, New Zealand.
And that's the beginning of a new life there. And also to, just what parents do is think about their environs and what's going on and where would be the best place to raise a family and what those sort of, what's the parenting look like? What does the family home look like? Who works, who doesn't, all these sort of things. So I remember, just for our listeners out there, I still got to stay in touch with Susan because periodically they would come back to New York City, and on the way flying back from New Zealand, they would have to have a stayover in San Francisco. And so we would always get, not always, but a few times we got 48 hours with your family. So it was, I got to meet everybody and we got to stay connected that way. And I think this is a good kickoff because this is kind of where it started to, you're on it. Again, many women can relate to this, right? But you don't have to move across the world, but you're beginning anew with your family. And there's this way we kind of shift our sense of self, right? Because we go into this giving of other. And I remember, you were planting a lot of vegetables. New Zealand is, a very expensive place to live. You had a garden and you had chickens. It's like Susan
Cows
from
and
the
sheep.
from the
Yeah.
Upper East Side is now a chicken farmer. This woman is so adaptable. And I just was like, you are amazing. So take us there. You're raising the kids. You
Sure.
not
We left New York City with 2 little boys and wanted that sort of quieter family life together. And we moved to a very rural place and had a bit of land and wanted to live off the land to a degree. I had no skills. Rob, I had, an interest. I wasn't quite sure what I was getting myself into, but we did. We lived rurally and we had sheep and cattle and chickens and a dog. And it was rural and it was, grew a lot of our own vegetables and that's where, and then by moving there, I chose to be a stay-at-home mom, and I was really happy to do that because I had had a taste of what it felt like working in Manhattan full-time with 2 boys. And, they were long days and you were separated from the kid. You'd leave, 7:30 in the morning and you'd get home at 6:30 at night. And so New Zealand offered a lot of potential for just doubling down on the family and being together with them. So it was great. So yeah, but it was very rural. And in staying home with the kids, I just dove into all the things that they were involved. Pretty much my interests became what they were doing in their life. And I took it on gratefully. So I was really involved in their school. And at a young age, they started playing sports. So I was pretty involved there. New Zealand has a great volunteer community. Someone once said to me, New Zealand would fall over without its volunteers. And it's real. And I had never been a big volunteer, but moving there, it was quickly recognized that you needed to dig in. So, rather than dropping your kids off at daycare, they have something called Play Center. So you would go to daycare with your children and you would run it with the other moms. So I met a lot of other moms at that time in Kaikoura, but was the treasurer and the president of Play Center. And we actually ran the center aside from one woman that you hired to be the teacher, like the trained and qualified teacher. It was all volunteer. So that was early days in Kaikoura, just digging into what the boys were involved in. And then getting involved with school and sports. And we were in Kaikoura for about 8 years. And I did that pretty, just dug in. I mean, everything they were doing, I was doing. And I loved it.
Yeah, and I think many women can relate to that. And then also too, then there's the story, the second half of the story is the years wear on. And in your case, your marriage started to not work. And that became a really challenging position. And many people can relate to this of, particularly women who are mostly happy, supporting the family and being I call women the operating system of the family. It's sort of like we're making everything run. We know where all the phone numbers are and how to make all the connections and definitely touch all the major kind of systems. And so when the marriage is not working, you're kind of forced with, okay, like these, what do I do? And I know that you tried to work on the marriage and it became inevitable that it just wasn't working. You're of different mindsets, but you're now in this role where you're probably, like many women, and if I may say this, like over functioning, right? You're doing probably more than you should.
Yeah. Doing a lot and gave up a lot, making that transition from New York to Kaikoura. I think of it as giving up my sail and jumping in another, I got married later in life and had a career and independence and financial independence. And that move, I jumped into another boat willingly. It was a lovely boat. But then the cracks were appearing and differences were being more recognized, and it was sad. Just a sad awareness was sort of dawning. And for me, my parents were divorced. I did not want to give that to my children. And so, you sort of feel like that's starting to happen. You double down on your commitments and you kind of white knuckle it a little bit. You're going to hold on to what you have, and then more cracks appear when that happens.
And that's kind of where I was saying the over functioning comes in, is because you hold on to what you have and what's working. Yeah. And so, or at least that identity, right? Because you don't want to shift that identity. And I think many women feel too also that it's often their responsibility to keep the family together. I could relate to many of the conversations that we've had. So you're at this point where something probably needs to change in the marriage, but you're avoiding it. And you have, in many ways, willingly giving up a lot of your own identity, right, to kind of create this life for our kids. And
I created this new identity is what I did, but it wasn't, it was very different from the previous identity of, that independent identity.
Yeah. So you go through the hard paces here. You finally the avoidance becomes where you can't avoid it any longer. And they say many women in marriages and relationships kind of grieve the loss of them while in the relationship because they're aware of what's going on. I remember talking like a little bit lost and unhappy, right? Yeah. So you needed to make some changes, and you were kind of left with a deep sadness that this was your reality. And I remember you say you were talking to somebody in your family, and it was kind of a catalyst for change. So tell us about that.
So we did separate, and it was just before COVID. And the boys were at a stage where it was important to see their high school years out, and that was going to be another 5 years for me. So we did separate, and the sadness kind of hit even harder when that happened. And I was in a foreign country. My career wasn't there. I had to start up, I had to find more work. I had to go back to work full time. I was just adrift, foreign country, family, friend support, that my U.S. family was not around. And I was having a conversation with my stepmom, Joanne, and I was really sad. She was a very good listener, but at one point she kind of threw her hands up and said, "Susan, I'm not going to talk to you again until you reach out and find someone that you can talk to there, find a counselor that you can go to." And my friend Mel recommended Shirley Prendeville, who I reached out to, said, "I need some counseling, need to talk to someone." And I think we were together 4 or 5 years. We were together until I left New Zealand just this past March, but we'll get to that. But yeah, so I engaged with Shirley and I went to see her once a week. And for years, she listened to the shame, the frustration, the anger,
all the things that you'd kept inside, right?
All of her things. And she listened and she said, "Oh, there they are, welcome them." And she taught me how to recognize them and trust that every single thought and feeling that I had was my truth. And to start listening to that truth, to trust my instincts. When you're in a situation and you're reading it, however you're feeling, that's exactly your truth. Don't push it aside. Don't people please. Don't try to do the right thing in the group or say the right things. She taught me, our work together taught me how to absolutely trust my instincts and follow them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so
She was a
great. And
godsend.
you got a therapist that really helped you kind of number one, get it all out and then identify like, okay, there's a knowing inside of me. And that's what I need to trust. I don't need to go out and continue to make others happy at my own expense. So really learning how to trust your inner voice. And then you're at this crossroads in your life because with your kids now, I'm just going to give Susan a little brag moment. Both of her children did crew rowing and have been or at Ivy League schools because it's just such a wonderful story because Susan has really worked so hard. So to have her sons now in the United States. And so Susan has since returned to the United States, which was another chapter that you kind of, you know, got through the divorce, got Shirley to help you to trust your instincts. You're starting to mentally and emotionally restructure and reclaim your power there. But then you had another challenge. You were moving back to the US and you were in a situation where you're like, I got to fix this too. Can you share what that is?
Well, yeah, you're staring down the back. Yeah. Well, the boys, they were having conversations with coaches and they did both get recruited. And during all of that, you know, I was supporting them and, you know, sort of, I just wanted them to have their doors open so they could see what opportunities were out there for them. So I was encouraging that and saying, you know, your choices are, you know, yours. You've got two options. So when that was happening, it was also that hard realization of they're going to be gone soon. Like that empty nester was looming. And I thought, God, what have you done for you? Like, what are you going to do, Susan? What's going to happen when they go?
So you did a really crazy thing. You flew.
So I
you flew like 6,500 miles from New Zealand to Tulum, Mexico.
Well, I had been following some people on Instagram that I was really interested in. I followed a woman named Train with Joan, who at 72, she reclaimed her health. Yep.
So this is a fitness journey because you put on quite a bit of weight right? Yeah.
I put on a lot of weight.
Well, this is another piece of it, right? This is
Yes. I was not taking care of my health. I put on a lot of weight those years in New Zealand. It slowly, you know, it sort of just gradually, it just, you know, every year, a couple more pounds. Anyway, so
I think it's just a metaphor for how we lose ourselves too, right?
It absolutely was. It absolutely was. And, you know, coping through, you know, the comfort of food and, you know, some chocolate. Anyway, so I absolutely did that. I did cope with comfort and food. Anyway, so I was looking at my health, and that was the first thing that I needed to address and turn my attention fully on myself for my health.
So you're in Tulum, and there's a program there.
Yeah.
And
so I saw that they were inviting people to this retreat in Tulum. I was in New Zealand. The dates aligned with my being free, and I saw it, and I went for it, and I booked it before I could even really think about it. So I was down in Tulum in December 2024, this past December. It was a 1-week retreat with the Wonder Women. So Michelle McDonald is the head. She is the Wonder Woman who started this online coaching program, and she brought it live in Tulum. And there were about 45 women. I showed up. I looked very different to what I look like now and very different from the other women that were showing up. Slightly mortified.
It must have been hard. It must have been.
I met Michelle and her husband, JJ. I met them on day one and said, thank you for allowing, you know, just outside random people to attend this. This is a big swing for me. I really felt very out of place. But I was super keen to learn about this program. I knew it was an online coaching program. I knew you had to apply. I knew it was where I was starting to get the feeling that it was holistic. It wasn't just about one thing. And it has been a godsend and a lifeline for me. So I went for the week and I attended all the workshops and ate with the girls that were there, the ladies that were there and the gals. And at the end of the week, I thought, yep, I'm going to apply for this coaching program. So the Wonder Women have a team. They have some very good coaches. And 3 of those coaches were there on the retreat. And Molly Keeland is my coach. She was on the retreat. I'll never forget her smile when I walked in. She's just a beautiful woman. And at the end of that 1-week retreat, my last conversation was with her. And we just connected, and I when I left Tulum after that week, I went away with the information that I needed to apply for this coaching program.
Yeah, it's a pretty bold move, Susan. I mean, I want to acknowledge this because you had to first take the step of getting the therapist to kind of relearn to trust your instincts and get that part of yourself back for the self-knowing.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we talk about in Live Your Jam Mix. How do you reconnect to yourself? And
Yeah.
from that, you're like, I really want to tackle my health now and wellness. And so you didn't just choose any program. You chose, like, you doubled down, girl. And you chose one, even me, I'm like, no thanks. But I mean, like, you chose one that was really all encompassing, and it's changed your life and your commitment to it. I mean, you've lost, how much weight have you lost?
With the Wonder Woman, about 70 pounds. But I did lose some weight before then. All up, it'll be 100 pounds. It'll be 100 pounds.
And now you're back to, I mean, so that commitment and that execution and your progress is outstanding. But what has it taught yourself, like that about yourself, that you had lost and now you have reconnected to?
1% better every day compounds in its results. And at the age of 59, I'm 60 now, it is absolutely possible to steer the ship in a different direction. The vitality and the energy and the health and the optimism that I feel now from following these steps. And I will say, I just want to say, it's not a program about losing weight. It's a holistic program. I'm tracking my sleep, my water intake, my steps.
So wellness, total wellness.
It's all encompassing. Yep. And it's not just one thing. So it's been a transformation.
Well, I think you're an athlete, Susan. You and I have talked about this.
Yes,
you're an athlete, and it's you lost that part of yourself, and you've now reconnected.
I have absolutely rekindled it. Absolutely. And I am an athlete now. And I was. I mean, when I was younger, I was. But for many, many years, I just didn't lock into that at all. I didn't pay attention to it. I just, sort of went about my way and gave that up. But that's all that right now, that's back. Yeah.
You've achieved, really, I mean, you're beginning your new chapter with deep self-awareness, a commitment to trusting your own instincts and always kind of working on your intuition. You've gone through this wellness journey, which I'm sure is going to continue on, maybe not with quite the rigor that you've had to, but also I'm sure there's habits that you've learned there. And you're ready to begin. You're in Boston now, living in a very cool area in Jamaica Plains. Both your boys are on the East Coast to the Ivy League schools that they're at, so you get to still see them periodically, and you're really ready to begin this new life. I think I want to know, and most of us know, because a lot of women who go through these life changes, like sometimes they don't make the bold steps, and that's okay. They can still make the small ones. But the real power is in reclaiming their own power. I'm going to say that, in reclaiming themselves again. And so what advice would you give to women who might be in your situation? Their kids have left empty nest. They're either working or not, but they want to reconnect with really who they know themselves to be.
I think it's listening to that deep inside, listening to those thoughts, listening to what those thoughts are. I think, part of my spinning when this was kind of all coming down the pipe was, what do I do? What do I want to do? And all I had to do was listen to what those quiet thoughts were. Where was my attention being drawn? Where were my thoughts going? And it can take any form. But for me, I knew it was my health because I had taken care of others so well, so lovingly for so long.
Yeah.
Gladly, happily, lovingly.
Yes.
I knew that I needed to turn that arrow back to myself. And that's what it was. And there may be other things other things will come from this. But that was the cornerstone. That was the one, my health and my energy levels were the one thing that were missing.
Yeah, so pouring that love that you so freely give others, and the way you mommed, like you mommed so well.
I love mom.
You were amazing at it, and still are, but giving that to yourself now, and stopping the role of pleasing and sacrificing for others and turning that inward. You're just 100%. At the beginning now of what you're going to be able to create, but you've got the two tools of listening to yourself and also taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
And also, Susan, one of the things I think about when I think of you and throughout the story, there's a subtext, is you are someone who is not afraid to take yourself out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it is inspirational, from the New York
It's
to
how we
Chicago to
grow.
around the world. Yes.
Yeah. 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 You really get a lot from it when you do.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And just
I have a
being
lot of people.
vulnerable.
Yep, so
Yeah.
just being vulnerable. Yeah.
Being able to, okay, this kind of, I feel uncomfortable here, but look at what is here in front of me. Like, I want this. How else am I going to get it? I've got to step into the discomfort. Yeah.
I have a lot of people ask me because, as you know, my marriage really kind of frayed while we lived abroad.
Mm.
But there are clearly things, as you know, as a divorced person now, like there are fissures and there are cracks that come long before when you're at the crisis point where you're like, we need to do something about this,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So a lot of people say to me, do you think moving to Switzerland was the downfall of your marriage? And I'm like, no, I had the best time there ever. I'm talking into the microphone like, oh, like I talk, but it's true. I'm like, no, that wasn't it at all. I mean, the pace of Switzerland allowed me to, I took myself out of my life, my day in, day out life in the United States. So I was able to look at things from a different lens. And I was able to I didn't have the support system that I might normally have had, which actually made me stronger and made me apply things and do things that I might not have done. So, I think in many ways, as the years have gone by, and for years we didn't know each other's marriages had problems. I mean, we're just two friends talking. And I don't, that that's even relevant, but it was funny how our stories there were so many similarities. And I hope that there are similarities for other women and those listening today. Like, it's never too late to begin again. And it's never too late to believe in yourself and give yourself that confidence. And like Susan De Vira, take yourself out of your comfort zone. And I love the Wonder Woman concept of just 1% better every day. Like, that's achievable.
Yeah, it sure is.
So thank you for your inspiring story. I have one other question that I ask all guests, you being my second one. It's the second time I've asked, but I'm always helping people listen to those inner nudges. My friend Terry calls them soul whispers, but you talked about it. There's these knowings that we have, and I believe that it's our intuition, which is the language of the soul, and it's our soul's way. Our soul holds our highest good, right? And it's our soul's way of saying, listen to me, I'm over here. So what are those inner nudges or inner whispers that you have right now, if any, that you're listening to that might not have taken form, but you're like, I hear you?
Well, they just guided me recently on doubling down on a situation that I've just been in that wasn't right. I had to speak my truth. I stood up for myself. You just have to let those in. I think they're always there. You have to trust them. Be true to yourself. Be true to what feels right. And those, when you are in a situation and you're reading, this doesn't feel right. It's not right. Trust it. Did that answer your question? I mean, honestly, it just happened to me, and I felt empowered because I listened, and it wasn't really what I wanted, but I got the best result because it was true to me. It's a rigorous listening and being attuned to, and doors close and doors open, and unless sometimes you don't want that door to close, but thank goodness it does, because there's the other road. Did I answer that?
Oh, Susan, you're so wise. Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you for that. I loved it. On so many fronts. I mean, what I am going to play back, what I just heard you say is listen to those inner knowings and act upon them, even when and trust them, even when you're like, and I've had that experience where there's an inner knowing, I'm like, but my mind's like, I don't want that, right? I don't want that door to close. I don't want that change. And really, it's what's true for you, regardless of what others think about it. And I also find that what we're wanting, it's never destructive. Like, it's kind and what's best. We may not like the discomfort it makes others feel.
Your personal power. It's your personal power that'll help guide you through where you need to go.
Yes. And Susan, that is so perfect because the title of this episode, as we know, is Reclaiming Your Personal Power. And I want to thank you so much just for your friendship. I'm
All
gonna get
of
for
you.
Clem. Yeah, I love you too.
Thank
And
you.
for sharing your story and just being completely badass. And I'm so happy for your health journey and for you to be back in the United States and for what's ahead for your boys and also just what you're going to create from the inside out here. So thank you so much. And everyone, thank you for listening in. We're going to sign
Thank you,
off here
Ellen.
at Live Your Jam. Susan De Vira, she's in Jamaica Plains, Boston, for all you people. Want to look her up. All right. And there'll be descriptions to Wonder Woman, and we'll just put those in just in case anybody wants to check anything out. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye bye.